issues that I know for a fact in my district, like in Liberty City, where black kids every single day are just trying to not just learn, but also trying to survive. They're not dealing with that. They're trying to deal with what is going to get them to remain in power and to get the governor to be president of the United States. And that's exactly what's happening.
So this is all an agenda to keep moving him forward on his
100%.
political path.
100%.
Back to this point of, because it's not just Mr. Mack, but other people in the state, there has been a suggestion to break ties with the College Board. What do you think of that, and would that require legislative approval in your view?
I don't know. I don't know if it requires legislative approval because I don't know if where the College Board is written into statute here. But they're a vendor, right? They're right. So they can go out and look for another vendor. Yeah. But I stand by what I said just a few minutes ago. Yeah, these are established organizations that have been here for years, and just because they push back on the foolishness that's coming out of the governor's office, and the repercussion to them is to say, oh well, we're going to go to another vendor. Sounds like a look elementary to me.
But there's really not much. There's not much people can do, right? And that, to me, to break ties with an organization like that, whatever you feel about them, would have really huge ramifications for students mainly.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I think you're already seeing the ramifications of that right now. You're seeing the uproar with students who are speaking out and saying, wait a minute, what are you doing? Like, I was preparing to take AP classes next year. But what happened to these students who have already planned out their entire high school time, their high school careers? I know I did. When I was in ninth grade, sophomore, junior, it was all planned out. And so I think it's going to do more than just interfere with students, but I think the parents should be in an uproar also.
Right, because it would be so disruptive to anybody's
100%.
Education
100%, Joan.
that they're on.
100%.
So what are your thoughts on the upcoming session? I just read that article about this, how to demonstrate now you have you heard about this? You have to align with an agency at the Capitol?
Yeah, we heard about it earlier. Yeah, we heard about it earlier this week. That's the people's house. That is literally the people's building. And the fact that they are making it harder for people to be able to come into that building, I don't know this Florida that we are right now.
Yeah. You don't sound very optimistic on how things are going either.
I'm not optimistic about anything other than us organizing to never see this again in the next 4 years.
What about this upcoming legislative session? Do you see anything major coming out of the legislature regarding education, much like we saw with the parental rights bill? I mean, do you see more of that happening?
Yeah, I think we just saw a new Don't Say Gay Part 2 just filed. There's an expansion of the voucher program to where it no longer have a cap of who can have access to receive a voucher. Now it's for all students can apply for a voucher, which is going to be a huge price tag for the state.
Wow. Okay, I guess stay tuned.
Stay tuned.
Okay. Wow.
It's always good talking to you, Joan.
Talking to you. You one by one. What's your first name? I'm going to hold it.
Dylan.
D-Y-L-A-N?
Yes.
And what's your last name?
Johnson.
Okay. And you're a senior?
I am.
All right, what is your recollection of the SAT?
The first time I took it, I remember it being, it was kind of hard, but at the same time I was confident because Florida has this program where we implement like PSATs that actually help me practice, and like I was already exposed to it before. So
did anything jump out at you in terms of content in the SATs? Did you find anything controversial, or do you remember any passages that alluded to anything dealing with either recent history or any historic events?
I can't remember anything specific, but I do recall passages from like times of slavery, but it wasn't like explicitly like emphasized about slavery. It was just like around the time. Did
it jump out at you, or did you feel like it was awkward, or in some way like it was it was meant to evoke a certain thing? Or just in general, was this a passage about?
For the most part, I didn't really I wasn't really affected by it, but I could see how some people, like some groups, would feel emotional about certain things in the passages. But
Okay, and you looked a little at this exam. How did it strike you?
I saw the exam. It was easier, and it felt like it would be less stressful for sure on students. I would rather take that one, but also I don't know how high of a standard colleges would take the test as.
Okay, so what would be your thought if they would suddenly get rid of SAT and take a new test, like all high school students in Florida?
I definitely wouldn't mind it, especially if the new test was better, if it better tested us, if that makes sense. Especially because like in other states, they've already started throwing away the SAT. But yeah, I don't have any connection to the SAT, any attachment.
It wouldn't bother you if that happened?
Not at all.
Okay. And what is your name?
Crystal Felix, KrystalFelix.
And you're a senior.
Yes.
And what's your recollection of the SAT?
I remember it being hard in the fact of the timing for it. I think that there's a lot of pressure that goes with the SAT, especially how that like determines if you get into college. So a lot of students add that to the pressure. I feel like for some of the verbal passages, they definitely made the questions more complex than it needed to be. So I think it like in some way they kind of made it more confusing than it had to be. But like him, I also had the PSAT, so I did have exposure. I did some practice on like programs like Khan Academy. So it wasn't like my first time seeing it. But I definitely think that to some people it's pretty hard, especially since it's like a whole big group of material. Like it's not something you've just been learning. You have to go back and say you took the class maybe a few years ago. You're not sure about the material.
Did you notice anything in the passages? Was anything offensive to you, or did you find anything that you felt there was like a certain message or anything about historic events?
Like him, I took it a few years ago, so I don't have the best recollection, but I do definitely remember like historical events. Some of them might have had slight bias towards like a certain minority or a certain group, but I can't fully remember. Personally, I don't think it really affected me. I was just reading the passage, trying to get the questions as fast as possible. So in that essence, I don't fully remember.
Okay. How did the classic learning test strike you as you read it?
I definitely think it was much simpler to understand. It was more straight to the point and more factual, I would believe. So in that way, I think it would be easier.
Would you think it would? What reaction do you think in Florida if we just totally got rid of SAT and went to something else? How do you think that would fly in high schools all over the state?
I think there would definitely be a lot of conversation about it, especially since everybody is used to the SAT and it's something that's been the standard. So just throwing it away and adding a new test might make people question, like, oh, so is this the new way to get into college? Like, is this the same? Are people like smarter if they took the SAT or like if they took this new one? But I think if people were able to adjust to it and like see that it was more helpful or something, it might be able to get assisted into the